Peace everyone, Unmask here. Welcome back to the Pastel tutorial. Hope you're all having a lovely day. Today we are finishing our project, so pretty exciting. At the end I will untape the border and I'll zoom out and you get to see the whole project in its completed form. So anyways, let's just jump right into what we have to do today, which is the little boat down here and the water, and that is it. So I'm going to do the boat first, and then we'll just jump into the water, metaphorically speaking, of course. So I'm going to start with the black, and I'm just going to fill in the black shapes to start off. Pretty simple. And of course, if you guys have any questions for me remaining, then by all means, ask away. Hello, Claire, Diane, Dottie, Nicoletta, Dawn, Yame, 007. Welcome, welcome. Glad to see all of you lovely people. So I'm just using black here, filling in the inside of the boat. It's cold and rainy here today, so it's a good day to just stay inside, do some art. All right, and then we have the corner of the boat right here. And I'm going to do a lighter base layer of the black because the boat is red after all. But this side is really dark, so just do a light layer of black for that shadow. Then I'm going to use the 610 brown. Morning, Yulia. Yes, the time it moved backwards actually here in Poland. So yeah, we have our time change different than other countries for whatever reason. Same thing happens in the spring when clocks change again. So yeah, the times are a little mixed up, but it's technically the same time for me that I always stream. I was considering to alter my time, but you know, when you look into it, there's actually a number of countries that sort of do their own thing when it comes to the daylight savings clock changes. And I didn't even know this until I moved to Poland. I had no idea that other countries did it on different days. And when I learned that, I was like, why would you do that? I mean, if everybody's gonna do it, and there's even some countries that don't do it at all, then why not do it on the same day? You know. Alrighty, now I'm going to use the 335 to get the boat red. I did a light layer of that brown because I don't want this red to be like super saturated. The boat's kind of small, so I wouldn't concern yourself too much with any particular details. There's some kind of word on the back, painted on the back. I'll probably just scribble a little bit to make it look like a word. Now I'm just going to blend these colors out, see what kind of boat I'm left with. I'd say in a lot of ways, um, without the context of the water, the boat doesn't really look much like anything. All right, it's a little dark, so I'm going to go back over it with the 335. Make that red stand out just a little bit more. Fine tune the shape. Hey there, Rare. Good to see you again. All right, I'm going to go back to the 610 brown. Put the ore in a little bit darker. And some more black. Do another layer of black. Make sure I get those shapes correct. Fix the little seat there on the inside. And then a little bit more with the 335 on the shadow side. Just to make sure it has the right color. And then I'm going to use a touch of a 681 just for a couple little highlights on the boat. Highlight right there, a little highlight over on this side. Corner. And blend this out one more time. There we go. And last but not least, let's just, can't quite read what it says, but there's like a little M. Just pretend to write something there. Well, thank you, Danielle. Alrighty. Now I think it is just time to start the water. And I think the best path to take, the simplest path to take, is to start with the 724 and to begin mapping out the shapes that we see in the water. So let's just start here under this bridge. You have the reflection of the bridge, and it kind of comes to here. So this is sort of the this is that dark shadow that you see. And then from here, you have a little bit of the dark shadow from the rest of this wall here. Kind of comes up to about the same height. Comes down to about here. And that dark shadow pretty much dominates this section of the water. And then, of course, this part of the bridge, same thing. It sort of comes out about to here. And I'm just doing a little bit of sketching to map this information out. Over here, there's a little bit of the like the plants that are hanging over the water. So this area right there is a bit darker. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this color. Actually, there's water line right there. There's some foliage right there, a little bit of grass, bushes. So everything that's not the darker shadow, I'm just going to fill in lightly with this 724. One rule to keep in mind is always keep your pencil moving horizontal. That's just going to help you establish the texture of the water, all of the little ripples in the water. It'll just make it easier to hide throughout the process here. So I think that there everybody should be able to do fairly easily. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I just did, but I'm going to do it inside the dark shadows using the black. So I'm going to map out sort of around the color shapes that you see. So if we start over on the left side, we see there's like a green. This is sort of the green area. This is sort of green here, here, here as well. This is green and yellow, big spot right here. Another green patch behind this part. Another little bit of green right there. And then here you can see some of the bricks. So it's sort of this. And so everything else is pretty much not necessarily black, but darker. So I'm just going to come in here and do the same thing, lightly put a layer of black within these shapes that I left blank. Try to get nice sharp lines at the base of the wall here where it meets the water. Around the little dock here as well. You can use this part to straighten up some of the shapes that hit the water. Where do I pull inspiration for my work? Um, I'm Danielle. I think you. I'm not Thomas Kinkade. I'm not sure if you realize that, but I kind of feel like you're identifying me as. I missed that in your first comment because you say howdy Thomas. I'm Thomas Kinkade has passed away. This is a copy of one of his paintings. This is not an original. But if you want to still know where I pull inspiration for my work, the answer is actually everywhere. There's nowhere I'm not willing to look to be inspired, and oftentimes I get inspired without even having to look. I sort of just come along something. All right. So there is some structure for the water. Now I'm going to start pulling in some color. So I'm going to use the 590 to start getting some of the green in. I'm going to fill this little part over here green. That's the grass on that other side. I would have done that yesterday, but I didn't quite see it. Let's see, there's this little section of green that I wanted to protect. There's this little section of green, and then it turns into orange and yellow. This little part of green, it's like a thin strip on either side, and yellow in the middle. And then you have the orange in the middle, and then another strip of orange, and a little bit of yellow. This is orange and yellow and red. So this part here, this is green. And then all of this here is green. So let's grab the yellow, the orange. I'm going to use the 620. So I have this part here. I have all of this here. Some right here. This is orange and yellow. This is orange and yellow. There, there, there. Yep, that's good. Now I'll switch to the yellow. This is the 695 yellow. I'm doing these very broadly because this is just the foundation layer. There's not going to be any detail on this first pass of color. We got yellow through here. Oh, and yellow through here. Put a yellow here. Big chunk of yellow and white through here. That's sort of the bright section. Yellow, yellow, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of yellow passively in the back here. What paper am I using for this project? I am using Pastel Matte. I always use Pastel Matte for any pastel project. Oh, you know what? There's a little bit of yellow over here too. No problem, Danielle. Do I take drawing suggestions? Yes. This is the drawing suggestion. All of the art club projects are based on suggestions by art club members. Because the reason, of course, is I want to teach people what they want to learn. So I always do the suggestions. I want to add some 681. This is a nice pink color. The next pastel project is going to be stormy seascape with a boat and a lighthouse. Let's add a little bit of blue to the water. So I'm going to use the 435. Trust me, I know this is rough looking. Let's go some brown. That's what I was looking for. The 610 brown. I'm going to put this in throughout the black a little bit. Get some variation. I need to add some of that 335, the boat color, as a reflection. And this is something that will come out a little bit more later, the reflection there. But as you can see, all I've done is scribble down the sort of the formation of where the highlights are and where some of the colors are. But it doesn't even look like water. It's only about the structure of where the highlights and shadows are in the water, and then a little bit of the color. So now I'm going to do the first blending. So just grab my little blender here. And just like the application process, I strongly urge you to stay horizontal with when you apply your pencils and also when you blend, just to concrete that water texture. This first layer is not going to cover the paper, so I'm expecting to have to blend a few times, layer a few times. The paper will not be covered 100% on this first pass. Recommend doing the brighter colors first before blending the dark stuff. Try to keep the colors separate when blending. Hey there, Barbara. Noelani. Jerry, good to see you. First initial goal is always to get the paper covered. That's the most important feature of getting it to look good. If you leave little gaps and graininess of the paper showing through, you're just going to be disappointed at the end of it. And that's probably one of the harder aspects of pastel pencils. When it comes to getting the paper covered, a lot of times in the beginning, when you start applying the color, you're going to feel like you've gotten the right color. You're going to feel like, oh, I don't want to add any more pencil because the color that I have is exactly what I need. And if I add more, it's going to change the color and I'm going to have to rework it or whatever. But if you do that and you stop before the paper is completely covered, it's going to come back to bite you, and it's always better to just rework the color again if it's required to cover the paper. So just keep that in mind. All right, so this is lap number 2. Basically, we're going to continue filling in these shapes, but now you're going to be a little bit more precise the second time around. So I'm going to go back to the 724 and I'm going to apply it where I applied it. But now I really want to set the stage for covering the paper, because it really should only take 2 layers for the paper to be covered. So here you'll see a lot of the colors change because of the second layer, but I will adjust them in the 3rd layer. Oh, thank you, Linda. Yeah, if anybody else wants to follow along on this project, all of the whole series for this project is on my website. I have a link in the description. Next Monday, we'll start the new Pastel project. Still have to get that project prepared. I don't have the... I didn't finish composing the reference photo. The next project will be original. It won't be a copy of someone else's artwork. The reason I used or chose to use this 724 color, it's a very neutral color in the grand scheme of the water. I imagine that if you were to mix all the colors of the water together, you'd get something pretty close to this. And so it gives you the flexibility to pretty much run this color through everything. The only thing that I would recommend avoiding is the yellow. So all of the really bright spots where the yellow is, I would avoid running this color over top, but everything else is fair game. So you can see that I've gone over pretty much everything, every single part of the water with this color. And it does drastically change the colors throughout, and it does alter the value, but at the end of it, you can see it already starts to look much more like water, simply because it sort of has that reflective property because of this color. And even though I'm not trying to create the texture of water, it is the simple process of moving horizontal that has created that almost water-like effect. So we're only 2 layers in. I've done nothing but scribble, and we've already have like semi-water look. I wouldn't say it's anything to be proud of as far as water goes, but the process for creating it is not complex. It really just boils down to paying attention to where the colors change in the water, blocking in those colors, colors plus value, and then maintaining that horizontal pencil direction. And that's really all it comes down to. So very, very fundamental things. Oh, hey there, Anushka. Hope your exam went well. Alrighty, let's see here. Let's go with some blue. So I'm going to grab the 435. I'm going to use a little bit of the 365 because that's the same color of this tree. I want to bring some of this in, reflecting that tree over here. And some more of the pink. This is a 681. Hi there, Stacy. I use just the white. So the gummed pad of Pastel Matte, just the standard white. I've experimented a bit with the colored Pastel Matte. The thing is, the way that I do my pastel work is I cover the paper 100%. And if you go that route, the colored paper doesn't really make any sense. Because pastels are very opaque. So if you're covering the paper completely, then it doesn't really make any sense to bother with colored paper. Like for instance, if this paper was any other color than white, you would have no way to tell at this point because it's completely covered. None of it is showing through. Um, so at the end of the day, it just wouldn't make any sense. So I don't bother buying any of the colored paper. I'm going to use the black now. I need to go back through these shadows and darken them. And I'm going to use a little bit more deliberate pencil strokes. I'm going to leave some gaps. I don't want to cover it up completely. I'll stretch shadows out into the lighter colors, as you can see here. So I'll leave gaps. Nothing special, just still horizontal lines, not really thinking too hard about it. Just leaving some gaps there. And as you build up layers and you do this, you just draw these horizontal lines. The stacking of these horizontal lines is what's going to give you the really cool water effect. That's what's going to give you all of the ripples in the water. You can already see underneath the bridge, it's looking reflective. It's looking like water, and I'm not doing anything difficult by any means. So very simple process. Just have to master drawing horizontal lines. Not the most complex shape to do. And we're going to blend this layer, so these horizontal lines will spread out, they will soften up, especially the black. The black is going, anytime you blend, the black color is going to stop being black. It's going to immediately turn into gray. And for that reason, you'll always have to reapply the black to get those really rich, dark shades. But that's not a problem, because we're going to do the same thing with the bright colors as well. We're going to be using the bright colors and white for the final highlights for everything also. I know the front face of this dock here. I'm going to use some 681 to create the reflection of the dock. The color of the pad is red. The all white paper is, the cover is red. If that's what you're asking, I'm trying to understand what exactly you are asking regarding the paper. But the pack that it comes in, it sort of has like a reddish maroon, almost the color of the boat color. It says white on the front, so you don't have to guess. Diane, you may actually be able to copy that link if you just right click and copy link and post it in the chat. That way they can just click on it, take them to the product page. Appreciate it. Alrighty. Um, let's yeah, let's add some more green, I think. It's a good idea. So this is the 590. I'm just gonna come back through, do another quick pass with the green. I feel like some of the paper is still showing through in the green areas. Just throw a little bit of green in here and a little bit of green back here. Let's go a little bit darker. I'm going to use some black over here, very lightly, just a bit of black to separate that grass there. And now it is time to blend. And this is just layer 2. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the link may have too many characters. Yeah, I shouldn't use, or I shouldn't start with the dark colors. So I'm going to start back over here. Again, blending horizontally. One of the real quick notes when blending pastel pencils, and really pastels in general, is that you never need to use pressure when blending, because more pressure is not going to help it blend. The colors will not blend farther if you push harder. So just keep that in mind. It's just better to use very little pressure when you're blending. You know, save your paper blenders. They should never wear out. So if they're getting frayed or whatnot, you're just pressing way too hard. There's no benefit to it. Especially pastel pencils. Pastel pencils do not blend very far. The pigment doesn't spread across the paper very significantly, especially on the first couple layers. On the first couple layers, you can expect it to barely go anywhere. And honestly, I like that property about it. It gives you more control. It doesn't feel as loose and wild like soft pastel. Soft pastel, you know, you make one little mark on the paper, you can basically spread it across the whole paper. Pastel pencil, it's a hard pastel, and it doesn't move as far, which is nice. Gives you a lot more control. When it comes to covering the paper, blending is not going to do it for you. You have to actually apply the pencil to the paper heavily to cover the paper up. Heat and cold don't affect pastel. Humidity does. The the more humid, the sort of the stickier the pastel will be. So it will not blend as well being humid. Humidity actually affects a majority of mediums, but heat temperature. Uh, Temperature doesn't have an effect on pastel, but obviously it would on paint, oil, or acrylic. It would have a pretty significant influence on drying times for those mediums. But pastel doesn't have a drying time. It's already totally dry, so heat doesn't have any effect in terms of its sort of the way that it would act. I can assure you it's very cold in my flat. We never we never turn the heat on here because it doesn't work at all. It's just a big waste of money. I'd say it gets down uh it's probably like 16, 17 degrees in our flat usually. I mean, once fall hits, and sometimes even before fall, like the end of summer, it really just it really just gets super cold. And I live in sweatpants and a hoodie 24/7 during a majority of the year, really. I mean, once September rolls around, it's pretty much hoodies, sweatpants until maybe like April, mid April. I like to sleep in cold weather, or cold temperature, not necessarily weather. We don't have weather in our flat, but we have cold. But I like to sleep cold because otherwise I get way too hot. Like if it's even in like the dead of winter, sometimes I get too hot when I'm sleeping. So I like it cold. My wife not she does not like it cold, but there's not really much we can do about it. And there's no effect on projects. Yeah, 11 is pretty cold. Yeah, that's pretty cold. I can't say that it's ever gotten that cold in my flat, but alrighty. So there's layer two. You can see it's much smoother and has much more water-like effect. Now, really, the process from here is just continuing the layers and fine-tuning the highlights and the shadows and everything. So I think what I'm going to so you got this color. I'm basically just gonna be using all of the colors throughout the entire painting. I'm gonna start with color we haven't used in a while. This is the 642. I'm gonna use this to bring in some of like the subtle purples into water, starting off over here. And again, just sticking with horizontal lines, not it's even though we're getting a little bit more detailed, it doesn't mean that it's more difficult. It's the same, just horizontal lines, creating the shapes that you see or close to the shapes that you see in the water. It's the variety of color that's going to make the water look really nice. So if you just stick with the horizontal lines, use the colors. Very pleased with the way that you're walking. Oh, hey there, snakes. Does anybody have any questions, by the way? And if I happen to miss your question, you can ask it again as many times as it takes for me to realize or to see it. One thing that's a little tricky to see is how non-black this back shadow is. It's black, but there's a lot of colors that run through it as highlights or reflections rather, not highlights. And so you don't want to have the back part of your water too dark, just flat black, nothing going on there. So just try to avoid that. Have a lot of diversity in the color, and you'll get better results that way. Hello, Andrea. All right, let's put that color aside and let's grab. I'm feeling blue. Let's go blue. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use a color I haven't used yet, because why not? This color showed up a little bit in the sky, a little bit in some of the trees, and that's about it. This is the 545. We haven't used this color in a while. This will add some nice bluish colors to our water. Almost make this area over here look like a rainbow. Got all the colors on this part. Also, I haven't added any white to make the water sparkle. So all of the colors are, there's still a degree of highlight that is yet to come in the water. And that will make a big difference. It'll make a really big difference in how shiny the water looks. Right now, the water looks a little flat. I'm sort of saving that to the end because I want the really bright highlights to be the last thing that you add to the water, because through this process of adding color, we're going to continue blending it. And as we increase in our layers, this is layer 3, we'll blend it a little bit less each time. And then once we add the final highlights and shadows, those parts will be blended the least, like just barely touching it, just to sort of push the grain into the paper. All right, now I'm going to use the blue, the 435. When I use the black, do I try to put another color on top? And would you put the black first or last? The order is a little less important than you may be assuming based on your question. But the black was put on first, right? When I started the water, I blocked out the shadows and I put the black down to sort of cement those shadows and reflections. And then we did that layer and I put the black back on top after I had put color. And so it's kind of going back and forth. The important factor, remember, the important factor is to cover the paper. So it doesn't matter which color you put on first or last. Cover the paper first. That's the first objective. Don't overthink that. Once you have the paper covered, the only thing that matters is that you don't leave it pure black. And most likely that is going to happen because you put color over top of the black. That makes sense. So the color is going to stand on top of the black because you don't want pure black. In some parts, you're going to want pure black, but in most parts, you're not. So don't leave it pure black. But just because you apply the black last doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get pure black, because it's going to mix with the colors underneath of it. I'm using this 435 to break up the shapes within the yellow so that they're not just solid blobs of nonsense color. Oh, hey there, CT. Good to see you. How are you doing? How's school? Been a while since I heard from you. Let's see here. Let's go with, I think I need some brown. Yeah, let's go with some brown. So this is the 610. This is a darker shade, so this is going to be sort of focusing on the shadow areas. You can run this color through some of the black shadows to break up the flatness of the color. Small parts in the back. Don't be afraid to come up into these brighter areas and just run a ripple of water. This would be the shadow of a ripple. So some of these ripples up here, they need to be dark as well to give it the context of having both a highlight side and a shadow side. So some of the dark colors will run into the lighter stuff. Just keep that in mind. It happens less, but it happens just about as much as the highlights do, because the highlights, they pop up, but they're not all over the place, because otherwise it would just lighten the water too much. So it's sort of a balance. Thank you. Sisudev. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct. Okie dokie, let's go with bright green. So this is the 570. Some of these green areas need to have some brighter green in them. This is going to give them a lot of character. Throw some bright green over in the grass over here as well. Notice how Kinkade used very, very short horizontal lines to actually draw texture on the reflections of the foliage. And it's just randomized short vertical bursts of horizontal lines. Very simple, and it adds a lot of texture to those reflections in the water by creating that ripple effect. And that's the way you want to use this green. So over top of those dark green shapes, you can add a very nice indication of texture and light. And it really makes those green reflections shine a lot in the water. I think that is just about going to do it. I have way too many pencils in my hand. Let's go with the yellow. Let's do some sharp dashed lines with the yellow. This is the 695 once again. Now it's going to be a little bit more focused because I want it to stand off the paper a bit more. Now to get the yellow to show up, you might have to press just a tiny bit harder, but not too hard. And a little bit of orange. This is the 620. Same thing. Just add a little bit of texture here and there. Oh, hey there, Warren. Alrighty, now I'm going to blend it. And like I said, at this point, you want to blend it just barely. The the amount that you blend it, it's actually less blending and more texture control, because when you apply the pencil to the paper, it sort of leaves a grainy scratch. And so the amount of blending it, the very, very little pressure, I'm going to hold the blender on the opposite end. That way I can't even press on the paper hard. So essentially the weight of the blender is all the pressure that you need. It's not meant to shift the color around. It is only meant to soften the texture of the actual pencil. And of course, always horizontal. After I blend this, the last thing I will have to do is adding the final highlights and shadow lines using the black and white, and then this project will be done. I will soften those lines that I add with the shadows and highlights by blending exactly the way that I just did. So very, very light. I didn't even have to avoid any particular colors because, again, it's not mixing anything. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the black, and I'm just going to come through here and I do a very small dashed lines and add some last little bit of texture in the shadows. Get some of those areas that need to be really dark, really, really dark. So any final questions? I only have a couple minutes before I'm going to be done with this, and then that'll be it. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this project. It was a lot of fun to do, and it was nice to see it come together. I'll be back with another fun one next week. I will untape this, by the way. So I'll zoom out and untape the project so you can see what it looks like in its absolute final stage. Also, on top of doing these final highlights, you'll notice there's some lily pads in the water. They won't look too different than just highlights, but they'll be green. So I guess the last couple colors that I'll use is black, white, and green. I suppose maybe I'll throw some flowers on the lily pads because some of Kinkade's lily pads have flowers, so. Thank you, Elena. Alrighty, let's grab the white. Now this is where the water is really going to shine. some areas of the water are just brighter as well. So not all the highlights will come as just single lines. I like to set the pencil on the side here because you're going to get a finer line on the side right there. And I just kind of scoop it across the paper. Little sweeping motion. So you can see how much those white highlights add to the texture of the water. Not too many of them. But I do want to focus a few parts in the yellow. Before I add the lily pads, I'm going to go ahead and smooth this out just a little bit. Very light touch of the blender. And I will use the 570 for the lily pads. Just a few little flowers. I'm going to use the 335. All right, can't even see those flowers, but they do exist. All right, let me move my pencils out of the way, because this project is officially complete. And now it is time for everyone's favorite part, where I untape the border. Okie dokie, let's zoom out. Go. All right, so let's start with these pieces of the tape. Remember, when you're untaping your pastel projects, always be very careful. Never pull the tape off quickly. I've been waiting a while to do this for this project here, wanting to untape it for weeks. It always looks so much cleaner once I remove this ugly tape border. Everything just looks so much better. never want to lose your patience here. Accidentally rip your pastel mat. So gotta contain your excitement a little bit at this stage of the process. Just having the tape off the bottom there makes the water look better, doesn't it? All right, last piece of tape. This will make the sky look better. Alrighty, and there you have it. There is the final project. Quite pleased with the way that it came out. I think anybody that gets it looking similar to this, which I know a lot of our club members following along will have theirs looking very much like this. I've seen the progress photos of several of you guys following along, and they look fantastic. So I look forward to seeing them when they're complete. Again, thank you all so much for hanging out while I do this project. I hope you had fun watching it come to life. And I will be back tomorrow for the colored pencil project. We're actually finishing up the colored pencil project this week as well. So 2 projects in 1 week. That doesn't happen too often. But anyways, thanks again for watching. Appreciate the support, and I will see you all tomorrow. Take care. Peace.